Welcome to the Business with Bordeaux podcast, where we're bringing basic business tips to entrepreneurs and the future leaders of tomorrow. Let's get down to business.
Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Business with Bordeaux podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. I have a great interview. This week I'm talking with Mr. Kevin Byers. He is the owner of Iron Made Gym. And so this would be very informative. I was thinking after we did the interview, it's a very business 101. There's a lot of great things in there. I wouldn't say business 101. I would say it's probably like a first year's business program, broken down, because we talk about the very start of it, the process, the legal stuff, the financial stuff, the transitioning from a previous owner of a building to him taking over the building, all these different things. And so it's just really good. And, I had a good time in this interview. So I thank Kevin for doing it. But before we jump into the interview, I do have a couple things I wanted to just let you know about. One thing that happened this past week, which was very unfortunate. And if you've been following Trackstarz, hopefully you have heard about this. But our social media director, he goes by Crispy, some call him Crisp, and he was viciously attacked with acetic acid, and so 60% of his body was burnt with it. He's been going through several surgeries already in just the past week that it's happened. And so we ask you for your prayers. There's a GoFundMe set up for him. I'm going to try to share that in the show description, even though it is going to be, hopefully, all of the funds will be met soon. But, even going above and beyond, that would be fantastic if we could do that. So all of you in the Business with Bordeaux community, the Trackstarz universe, and anybody else who was checking us out who's not necessarily in those particular networks all the time, I do ask that you support this individual. He worked with, youth. He was a youth program volunteer, and just a really great guy overall. So we do ask for your prayers and your support for him, and I appreciate you and doing whatever you can to help that out. And so the next thing I wanted to tell you is we are doing a giveaway. Now, I think I said a couple weeks ago, Kelly Cole, he was an individual on the show. If you don't remember, it was probably 2 months ago, I think. And he is he's the manager for Aaron Cole, the artist who just got signed to Goatee Records. But he wrote several books. He has a book publishing company. And so he ended up giving me a copy of his Conversations with Sharks book. Now, this is the book where he talks about on the actual episode we did, where he interviewed some of the sharks from Shark Tank. He took all of the notes that he took while watching the show, and he put them in this book. And so there is a signed copy of the book that we're going to be giving to a lucky individual. And so all you have to do to enter is share your favorite episode of the Business with Bordeaux podcast on your social media and hashtag Business with Bordeaux. And on May 1st, we'll be picking and selecting a winner out of those who do that. And you're going to get a free copy of this book sent to you. So, and this book it's really cool because it's like it's a whole bunch of like, what they call footnote, or not footnotes, but it's like bullet points, a bullet point book. And then, he interviews two of the sharks from up there, which is really cool. So, Damon John and Barbara Cochran. And so make sure you enter to win that. Again, all you got to do is share your favorite episode of the Business with Bordeaux podcast on your social media and hashtag Business with Bordeaux. And so anyway, without further ado, real quick, I do have to shout out my patrons. Almost forgot. Mr. Aaron Simpkins at TrueStrengthApparel.com. Make sure you check it out. If you need to get some clothing or some apparel done, head over to TrueStrengthApparel.com. Actually, Aaron is the one that hooked me up with Kevin Byers to do the interview. And so, Aaron, I appreciate you. Love you, man. Thank you for that. And also, Mr. Prophet Josiah. He is a recording music artist. He also is the individual we talked about music publishing. And so go check out, he has an EP coming, but you can go check out all of his singles. His newest one is it's titled My God is Dope. and very, very catchy. You could just something you can ride to and really enjoy. And so check that out, as well as Mr. LT Smith. LT is also a recording artist, and he's got a new single called For the Culture. And so all of those links will be provided, so you can check the music out, and you can check out True Strength Apparel's website. And without further ado, now here's the interview with Kevin Byers. Alrighty, welcome to another interview here on the Business with Bordeaux podcast. I'm excited about this one myself. When I was in college, when I was in business school, there was a young man who wanted to start his own gym. And so right after that, my brother Aaron Simpkins told me about this guy who owned a gym that he knew, and said that he did so very well, that he was a great guy. So I wanted to get him on the show. Today I have with me Mr. Kevin Byers, the owner of Iron Made Gym. How's it going, man?
It's going fantastic, Jason. Thanks for having me.
And I appreciate you taking the time, being on the show. As I tell, a lot of the business owners that jump on this podcast, I know it takes time to cut out, especially whenever you're heading up a company, and I do consider, anything a company. So, I'll probably use different lingos for the gym, but yeah, man. So, just want people to get to know you a little bit more, maybe on a personal level, before we jump into the business aspect of Iron Made Gym. But just let people know, like, who is Kevin Byers, and why did you kind of get interested in doing any of this to begin with?
Right. So I guess I grew up on a farm, so I knew what hard work was at the beginning. I fell in love with basketball first, I'd say. That later transferred into, well, how do you get stronger for a sport? So then I started lifting later in high school. I was always the smallest kid in the court, but really fell in love with lifting a lot, especially going into college. Went to Slippery Rock University, majored in business marketing and management, and through that is when I had my real big growth spurt, so to speak. For my freshman year in college, I was still 5'5" and 155 pounds, and then I went up to 6'3" and 220 plus. So it was a big jump. It took a big toll on my knees. Got to take some time off from basketball because of that, but that's when I got into bodybuilding. So that's when I really dove into the weight room environment, so to speak.
And so it was in college?
Yes.
Okay. Now, that's interesting to hear that. So a growth spurt made you stop doing basketball?
It definitely hindered it.
Uh-huh.
My patella tendons had so much tendonitis in it that I was walking around on crutches a lot of time. I spent 2 years in and out of physical therapy.
Wow, that's interesting, man. I've never heard anything like that. So you transitioned to doing bodybuilding. Now we've had a bodybuilder on the show. We had DeAndre Campbell, and so we talked about that a little bit. But if you will, just try to just break down real quick for those who might not have heard that interview what bodybuilding actually is.
Yeah, so bodybuilding, you're doing your conditioning, your mass building, all that kind of stuff. But then you have to, leading up to a show, you have to pretty much strip away all the fat. And a lot of people do water depletion. And then you pretty much go on stage in a Speedo, and it's an art form to it because you have to present yourself in a 60-second routine, choreographed music if you'd like, but showcase pretty much what you got. And there's mandatory poses you have to do, and then they bring all the classes back out on stage. You do a pose down, and then you go from there.
So did you have a particular song that you would pose to?
My first one I posed to a couple of different songs mashed together, some rock, but now I actually switched more to Christian rap. I've done NF intro 1 and 2. He's my dude.
Gotcha.
Love that guy. He gets me hyped. But yeah, that's more what I'm into now.
Okay. So you still do bodybuilding?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. That's I think that's a good look for especially a gym owner, is doing what it is that you're kind of providing the access to. And a lot of times, I guess there are people who own businesses and they're not a I guess a customer of their own business, I guess I'd say. And so that's pretty cool. Now when did you how did you get involved into wanting to actually own a gym? What were the kind of steps that led up to you saying, okay, this is something I want to do for a living?
Right. So when I graduated from Slippery Rock, I was in business marketing and management, and I spent 6 months unemployed after that, looking for a job. I was in the classic catch-22 of no one would hire you because you don't have any experience.
Yeah.
But experience, no one hires you, right? So that was, I'm sure lots of other people have been through that. Frustrating. But I got my first sales job working at the Grove City outlets, just doing retail sales for clothing and stuff. Did that for 6 months, and all that time I was lifting at a local gym that had been there for 18 years. And then one day I went in, the owner came up to me and said, "Hey Kev, I got some bad news. I'm going to be closing up." And I thought he was joking. And then I looked at him and he was clearly devastated. And then I was devastated. I felt bad for the guy. He'd been a big part of my life and shown me the ropes of how to weight train and whatnot. So then it became a problem solving solution. How can, I need a place to lift. So do my friends. So how can we come up with a place, or where are we going to go next? The chain industry, the Planet Fitness, all that kind of stuff, that wasn't our style whatsoever. So we just started coming up with ideas, and we're like, all right, we're either going to do a garage gym or this or that. And, one thing led to another. And I was able to actually move into the spot where the previous gym just left. That guy helped me get started, and was able to find some equipment. And that whole story is just the best case story of my life of when God just completely intervened and just took control of everything and was just like, hey, here's what you need to do. What you were trying wasn't working. Go do this instead. And it was nothing short of amazing.
So can you just break down a little bit more what you mean, what you were trying wasn't working? What was it that wasn't working?
Absolutely. So I was frustrated working in the clothing sales. There wasn't really anywhere to go up in that industry. I'd been there for 6 months, like I said. So what I was trying to do was start some type of a gym, whether it was in a basement, whatever, for myself, for my friends. And, excuse me, I woke up the one morning and I had 3 different locations, picked out of equipment I found on Craigslist. And I got up and I look again and it's all gone. And I'm just like, what is going on? I thought I had everything planned out. Everything was, going to come together, and all fell apart right there. And I was just devastated. And I remember just sitting there crying, and I'm like, you know what? The one thing I didn't do is I didn't pray a single time about this.
Wow.
Shame on. I was honestly embarrassed for myself. That's not how I conduct myself, and I knew better. So right then and there, just started praying more about it, seeking God's will about it. And I answered an ad on Craigslist. This guy was selling 45-pound plates, and it was a good price. So I called him up, and he's like, yeah, Kev, I got a whole bunch of other stuff. Come on out. So I drove out to Boardman and the industrial part, this little warehouse in the back. I had no idea where I was. Never met this guy before in my life. I took someone else with me, and we walk into this first room, and there's this cable machine that is just disassembled. And I'm like, oh, that looks really familiar. What is that? He's like, that's the Carrion Jungle. It's a 6-station piece of equipment. I'm like, dude. And I didn't tell him this, but inside I was just jumping, because 2 days before that, I saw this piece of equipment online for sale, and I set it as the background to my computer at home. And I said, before I die, I want to own that piece of equipment, because it is beautiful. And it was just another case of like, God's like, hey, here's a used piece. You'll save some money on this. So, we're walking through the rest of equipment and whatnot. And I wrote down a list of everything that I wanted. And then this guy is like, oh, by the way, I don't take checks. And I'm like, all right, well, I understand that. And he's like, oh, and also I'm not going to be here. I'm leaving tomorrow morning. So I'm leaving out of town. So you got to come get this stuff tonight.
Wow.
This is like 2 trailers loads of heavy commercial grade equipment, and I don't even own a truck. And So I got some friends together, and we were able to get a truck, a trailer, and had to wait till my mom was a teacher. Had to wait for her to come home from school, and I was like, "Mom, here's my business idea. What do you think? Can you help me?" And without even flinching, she said, "Absolutely, let's go to the bank." She helped me out. I called my brother, told him the same thing. He's like, "No worries. I believe in you. I'm going to send you a check overnight." So just like that, the next morning, it's been just amazing ever since.
Wow, that's incredible, man. It's yeah, I think sometimes, especially starting off, and I think with a lot of people who are into strategy and business strategy and, development, I think we have that tendency to just get a piece of paper and pen or, tablet, phone, whatever, and just start trying to figure stuff out immediately. Like, and it's almost like sometimes I feel like God can give us an idea and then we'll just snatch the idea from him and just run with it ourselves. And
Yes.
and so, just for anybody out there, if you have an idea, pray about it, like being consistent prayer. And
Yes.
because if you try to do it by yourself, you go run into what Kevin ran into, which is a frustration and failure. And so I love that you shared that. And so you start getting equipment. And did you actually start in a garage, or did you have like a small space to set up? Where did you actually begin the gym at?
We moved right into the place that was already there. So he had been there for 18 years. I want to say it was around 2,000 square foot, and we just moved in the same spot.
So did y'all like? Did he own it, or did you have to go to a bank and get rent, or did you lease it?
He was renting the spot,
Okay.
so I'd met with the landlord, and we moved in there, and it was only a 7-day turnaround from when he left to when we moved in.
Oh wow. So that was a fast transition.
Yeah, because 7 days before that, I didn't have a single thing.
Wow.
And like I said before, I did all this with, I think I had less than $800 in my bank account. So I was very blessed with, my family's the one who backed me with this. I give all the credit to them for believing in me. And, it's funny, one of your comments before, it's pretty funny that I was just talking to somebody about this the other day of, um, I'm sitting down trying to plan out the next moves and what's going to happen next. And I'm thinking like, man, keep educating myself in business. And the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know anything. And yet back then I knew nothing, and all I did was go. And I think so often that's the part that we miss is it starts with action. And sometimes you don't know everything, but you have to step out on faith, and God just tells you to go.
Yeah, yeah. And I do think there are times where, you do move at a fast pace, but I feel like, God will let us know when you're supposed to, when to act fast, but still with his guidance.
Absolutely.
Still with his guidance. Because, we don't always have, 6 months to plan out everything. And so, like I said, I'm loving that part of the story. And so you move in now. I have a feeling there, and this is me not knowing, I would assume there's some type of regulations you have to meet to have a gym. Was there anything that you had to do? Because I feel like there's liability issues, maybe insurance you had to have. Uh, was there any of that was there that you had to go through?
Yeah, but there really wasn't too much red tape. The biggest part was honestly just trying to tell the landlord, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. And the part that helped me out the best was the previous gym owner who was in the spot vouched for me. He said, I want Kevin in here next. I've been helping him start this, and I think he's going to be good. He's been a customer of mine. I'm vouching for him. So I said that was the biggest thing, just because without that, I wouldn't have had a space. So I'd say that was the biggest, red tape thing, so to speak. But yeah, otherwise you need, your liability insurance, your renter's insurance. Now that I personal train, you need personal trainer's insurance. It's all stuff that you pay for that you hope you never have to use.
So if you don't mind me asking, I just want, because I do know a couple people who have, thought about starting gyms. And how much was the cost for like the insurances and stuff?
Yeah. So usually the renters and liabilities, I think I pay right around 12 or 1300. Personal trainers is right around that also. That's for a year cost, and that allows me to train on site or off site. So it's a lot of flexibility. And one of the biggest obstacles from my perspective is I wanted to open a gym that I would want to personally lift at. And then where I grew up, it was a 24/7, 365 gym. There wasn't even a key. And that guy had been in business for 18 years. No cameras, nothing, right? So try to get somebody who's going to ensure that. Like, it's just crazy, right? So, I eventually did add cameras. We have a key code on the door and stuff, but that's not where I started. We changed to that. I was in that spot in the basement of a commercial building for 2 years, and then I moved 3 miles straight down the road to the Middletown, Ohio. So I was in Bessemer, PA. That's where the roots were. And then we moved and have been in New Middletown, Ohio for 7 years now.
Okay. And so was there, were there any issues at all with not having a locking mechanism and all that stuff? Did you encounter anything, or was it kind of smooth?
I would say it was pretty smooth. Only one time there was something fishy before I, ended up, when I moved, I put the key code system on. But the one time I actually drove out to a neighboring town, and my mom said that the gym was for sale out there, and I'm like, all right, well, let's go find out if we can expand the business. So drove out there, and there's a lady at the front desk, and I start talking to her, and she happens to be the actual owner, and she's like, no, it was a misprint paper. We're not actually for sale. It was the person next to us. So I was like, this is a great opportunity to ask her questions about business. So we started talking a little more, and I asked her what she used for security system and all this stuff, and she's like, what do you use? And I said, ma'am, I don't honestly use anything. And she said, oh, what do you have on your door? I'm like, it's unlocked at the moment. She's like, how do you sleep at night? I said, I just pray a lot. I mean, I didn't know any better, and it was such a tight-knit community that, that's my dream for the business, is to have a open family. And I often accustom it to the show Cheers, where people walk in, everybody knows your name. Norm, hey, everybody's yelling good morning, good afternoon, everybody's tight, and that's the kind of environment we try to foster.
Right. Well, that's cool because, I think, I see a lot of people that go to the gym, and I go to the local gym here, and a lot of people just know each other, and they come in, they chit chat, they exercise together, and, it's their own social environment. And
Right.
That's their social media is the gym, much healthier social media. So,
Right.
well, that's cool, man. So, how long after being at the one resident did you say you moved to Ohio?
I was there for 2 years.
2 years. And so was there anything, what were some of the biggest things that you would say that you probably learned going from the first place to the second? Was there any big growing factor there, or?
The biggest thing that shocked me was through, I'd say, probably a 6-month transition period. I ended up losing probably, I'd say, 85% of my PA clientele over a 3-mile stretch of straight road.
Wow.
I never foresaw that whatsoever. And they ended up going to they just drove the opposite direction pretty much and went to a different gym. But it all ended up working out. No hard feelings, obviously. I still live in Bessemer. But that just really shocked me.
So it was only 3 miles away.
Only 3 miles.
And 85% of people said that was too far.
Yeah.
Wow. It's amazing because, that almost, puts an exclamation mark on how much convenience you can serve.
Right.
Because 3 miles is not that far, but, and I'd say myself, we have a little small, tiny gym here at our house, and then I go to, I go to my local Y, which is probably 7 miles further away. And my wife doesn't like going there because she says it's too far.
There you go.
And so, just it is. I do see that myself, and I never thought that really was a big deal, but that's incredible, man. So did you kind of have the same clientele that the previous owner had whenever you took ownership?
So whenever he sold his business, so to speak, there was 2 guys that bought the equipment, took all of that out, and started a different gym about 30 minutes away. So it was just an empty space. And because of that 7-day lag of me moving in, there was probably, I'd say, up to 50% of the people had already left. So even though it was only 7 days, I was starting in the hole in the recruitment process already. So there was definitely some growing pains for sure.
Wow. That's crazy. 7 days and 3 miles. That
Yeah.
sounds like a book, man. It sounds like a
Yeah.
book. 7 days and 3 miles. Oh man. So
One of the coolest things when we moved that 3 miles, um, it all happened overnight. I was a big advocate of no one should have to miss a workout, and all the customers were so gracious of so many people volunteered their time of we started at 7 o'clock at night, tore everything down, put it on flatbeds, trucks, cars, everything, drove it 3 miles, reassembled everything, and we were open again for business at 6 a.m.
wow, that's crazy, man. So, I mean, and, kind of going back just a little bit, little backtrack. So, did you establish it as a limited liability corporation, LLC?
Yes, started out as an S corp, and then after I think it was before I got married, I did an LLC. Yeah.
Can you explain why you made that transition? What the differences are?
Main reason for the limited liability was when I got married, if heaven forbid a lawsuit happened to happen, the person would only be able to attack my iron made assets, so to speak, as opposed to things that we owned jointly, such as our home or things in our house or our vehicles or anything.
Right. And how does that change with the S corp?
To be honest, I am not quite sure. That was I remember researching it back then when I did it, and it was brought to my attention by my tax guy. I can't honestly remember that.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering because I think these are the small things that people don't really think about whenever they want to start something. Is
Yeah.
there's a lot of little small things here and there that if you have no business training at all, that you just don't know was there, and so it's hard to plan for it and all those things. And so, what would you say your total, if you can remember, what was your total startup cost from rent to insurance to equipment to filing the legal paperwork? Uh, what does it take somebody to get started? Would you say? I mean, and I know you bought a lot of secondhand stuff, so that takes into account. But any of us could buy secondhand stuff. And so, could you give a roundabout on what the total cost was to actually get started?
Yeah, I think I spent 8,000 in equipment right up front, and then it was 500 in rent and probably 180 to 200 in utilities every month. So the relatively cost was pretty low, but that's also pretty high when you don't even have $900 to start with. So
Right.
my goal was I want everything paid off in less than a year, and I had it all paid off in 11 months because I was still working multiple other jobs whenever I started it.
I'm glad you threw that in there. So you, even with owning this business, you still had other things you were doing outside of it.
Yeah, I was farming and doing construction half the day. Then I'd do side roofing jobs, all to get out of debt sooner, and pretty much just to keep my hands busy everywhere.
Gotcha. Now, did you set a goal on when you wanted to go full time with the gym?
No, I did not.
Was that good or
Uh,
bad thing? You kind of sounded like you should have.
yeah, yeah. So let's see. Full time happened a little over 2 years ago. So when I got married, for when I got married, I accepted a new position, doing sales of galvanizing kettles all over the world. I did that for 5 years. That was an amazing experience. Got to do a little bit of traveling, and it really pushed me out of my comfort zone because I'm naturally a very introverted person, and so I had to deal with sales calls and meeting with people, and I would say 100% of the people were older than me than what I was dealing with because they'd been in the industry for a long time. So I got to see a lot of different sides of business, and that taught me a lot. And then, but right around the 5 year mark came, and I was supposed to go on this business trip, and I ended up not having to go or not getting to go. And in that exact same week that I got told, a security job that I had asked about 2 years prior, it was part time. It was like a night shift work, had opened up, and So then I started thinking, well, maybe this is a good outlet for doing the gym full time. So I made sure I started with prayer this time because I learned my mistake. I'm like, shame on me if I do this again. So my wife and I, we were praying about it, and I decided, I think this is the way I'm supposed to go. I'm supposed to be personal training full time, which personal training is something that I got asked about whenever I first opened my gym, and I said, absolutely, I'll never do that. And here I am doing it full time. So it was just a whole nother God thing of I went from having one job to transitioning in 2 weeks to working 3 or 4 different jobs because then I had security on top of that. Then I ended up hurting my neck and going to the chiropractor. And while I was there, they offered me a personal training job there. So that's where I actually started while I was starting my own personal training business. So it was just, it was an all out sprint and it was exhausting, but it was all worth it. And just another amazing example of God's grace.
Right, right. Now, I got a feeling, even with the stuff we've already talked about and these questions I'm coming up with, this is going to be a very business 101 class in a realistic, practical setting. And questions that a lot of people have, because one of them that I thought about was the fact that you worked with another company for 5 years, and it sounds like it was a bigger company. In terms of like health insurance, one of the biggest questions that people have when it comes to starting their business is being able to afford health insurance. Because I think most people can afford, I think most people can meet the the actual paycheck. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think people
Right.
could leave their job and get the money to replace their bill money and stuff. But the insurance typically is a harder struggle. Was that something that that you had to face?
It was not. Right before I got married, I spent probably a year and a half without any health insurance at all, which was very dangerous because I'm very injury prone. But when I got married, my wife's a teacher, so I was able to get on her health insurance. So we didn't have that worry whatsoever. So that helped out a lot.
Okay.
But I completely understand that situation. That's really tough because we've talked about, when would it be feasible, if ever, for my wife to stay home. And honestly, sometimes it comes down to health insurance, and it's just crazy that people have to pay that much.
Yeah. Have y'all looked into it?
Not to the dollar,
Okay.
no.
Okay. Because I know, whenever I had thought about, I looked into it, and I mean, and I'm diabetic, so it's, for a family, I think it's a little over $1,000 just, right here in my area. And that's a lot of money.
Yes, it
It's a
is.
lot of money, especially when you're paying that much and you're hoping you never actually have to use it. Then it looks like, oh man, that's a waste of money.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
And so, that's, I guess that's a lesson for people out there. If you are wanting to start a business and you have a spouse who has insurance, that's definitely the way to go. And I know there's a lot of people that actually, I've heard of a lot of people doing that. And so that seems to be kind of the popular route and probably this one of the smarter routes. So, but, for anybody who might be single out there, that's a different kind of, struggle. So, yeah, hopefully one day we'll be able to figure out an answer to that. But
Yeah.
but yeah, man. So with with you working so many other jobs, how did the I guess the management of the company work? Did you have other people working for you? How did all that kind of go about while you were still working other jobs?
We did not have anybody else on the books whatsoever. It was just me there whenever I could be there, and that's kind of the beauty of it. It's sort of we operate under the honor system, so to speak. So when someone new comes in, we sign them up, tell them what the rules are. Here's your forms you need to sign. Here's what to do. When you're last person out, lock this up, turn these lights off. You're good to go. Obviously, my mom, my sister, my wife, they worked out there. So when they were there, they were able to take care of some things that needed done. But yeah, it was pretty turnkey operation.
Nice, nice. And with the contract wise, were there, what are some of the things that you had to put in there for your clientele?
So we had a liability waiver drawn up by my tax attorney, and it's pretty much, they have to sign this. That gives you're waiving your rights if you get injured to sue because you're assuming that you're operating under the best guidelines for lifting techniques and whatnot. And we have a social media waiver in there also that we're allowed to use your image for the Iron Maid gym purposes. And then if they're under 18, obviously they need a parental signature and sign off and whatnot, and they're good to go.
Awesome, man. So, a question with a tax attorney, and I actually thought about this a while ago whenever I was coming up with a business plan that I had to do for school myself. Is with a tax attorney, is that somebody who you have to like pay a retainer to every month, or is it like certain things that work for you to help you draw up certain contracts and things like that? How does that work in terms of the the business and like financial wise?
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of surrounding yourself with wise people and learning from other people's mistakes, so it saves you yourself time. This guy was referred to me by one of my previous employers, and he was able to pretty much do everything, draw up any documents that I want. He does mine and my house's taxes at the end of the year. And he's an attorney, so if anything, God forbid, does happen, he can represent us in court. We don't have to pay, monthly or anything. It's just per document, per, thing that he does for us. That's how he charges.
Okay. And yeah, because I think whenever I was researching it, like tax attorneys were one of the more expensive parts of starting up something, and so that's and I'm seeing a lot of people were doing like they would just kind of pay them per as needed. It's kind of PRN. How much does the gym in a year bring in revenue wise?
Well, since we just finished up taxes, I can say that last year we had our biggest growth, which was 17%. So
Okay.
that was the biggest increase whatsoever. And part of that's due to we were able to hire another personal trainer. He works at a private contractor setup, so he's not always on the books. He's not like a full-time employee or anything. We chose to handle it in that manner, so he works when he's needed. But that was just that was a great decision, because being able to delegate work, knowing that I can't take on everything, and not only that, but personal training wise, that each client, not everyone's going to respond the best to me, and I need to be able to realize that. So if they operate better under somebody else's facility, then they deserve them. And that's just a big change that we had to make, and some growing pains through that. But that guy's doing a great job for us. We're happy to have him as long as he stays. That was a big contribution to our growth for sure.
Nice. And, I think delegation, I hear, is kind of a hard thing to do, especially if you've been doing something for so long yourself. Bringing somebody else in and saying, here, I trust you with this, seems to be kind of a hard thing to do. Was it hard to begin with, or did you already kind of have that ease about it?
Because I knew him for a decent amount of time, and I saw how he trained. I saw that he was competing in bodybuilding also. It's something he fell in love. He was a previous athlete also. I had a real ease about it. I really didn't have any worries. It was a smooth transition, to be honest. It was good.
So you're not really dealing with a whole lot of people that you don't know on somewhat of a personal basis.
As far as the employee wise, no. As far as client base, yeah, a lot of them we never even saw before.
Right. And that's part of the contract, though, right?
Yeah.
You had that there as that kind of safeguard, and so that's cool. So is there anybody else working at the gym right now, or are you just there full time yourself with your partners and family?
Yep, I'm just there full time.
Now, what was that transition like going full time? Because were you already pulling in any type of income beforehand before you went full time?
Nope, I never took any money as far as like a salary until I did go full time. And even then it was hard, because you had to build up a personal training client base first before you could, clear all your overhead and whatnot. So that was a little tough for the first couple months, but it starts back to, when I first started the gym, that I have no idea what I'm doing. So let's just try this and see if it works. And if not, then adapt.
Right, right. And so is it like do you take like a owner's type of income, or do you just do like personal training income?
I do a percentage based. So after I take out everything and we put into savings, and then we tithe, and then we see what we got left, and we're like, all right, that's what we need.
That was going to be my question too.
Yeah. No,
Do you tithe as a company?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And is it to your local church?
Yes, sir.
Awesome, man. Awesome. I think that's something else that, I think we know as individuals to tithe our income. And I don't know how many people, think about the tithing as a company quite as much. I mean, the only time I ever really heard about it was through, Dave Ramsey. And but, I think from his perspective, it's like, you tithe to nonprofits or churches are nonprofit, but, other nonprofit organizations, I guess.
Right.
And so it's really cool that you do that. And I do believe that there is, I do believe in sowing and reaping, and I feel like that's a part of that too. So, just being honorable with your money and, giving God what's his. So, uh, so what was your growth strategy like in terms of getting a new clientele, and how did you know how much to charge? Because I feel like sometimes when we start off, we want to charge a really, really low just to get people in the door.
Right.
But then when you do that, eventually you do have to raise the prices, and that can make you lose some of your clientele. What was your kind of strategy in that, getting people in, and how did you know what to charge them?
Right. So we pretty much called around all the places around us within, I'd say, a 20-mile radius, seeing what their memberships were, seeing what they were charged for personal training, asking the business-minded people around me what they thought of this, what they thought of that. And, it kind of comes down to, all right, here's what you don't want to make it too cheap, because then it lessens your value of what you're offering. And, eventually you're going to have to up your rate. So how big of a hike do you want? Our goal is to make it affordable for the person who's really looking to get the most out of it. And that's sometimes the frustrating part of training, is if you want it more than your client does. But we have a lot of great stories coming out, people really changing their lives. I mean, we have one kid who just lost 141 pounds, and it's not even a year yet.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. The people who really, it's just like anything else. The people who really buy into something, who really immerse themselves, are going to get the most out of it. And you can apply that to anywhere in your life whatsoever. So it's very humbling and very fulfilling, really, to walk alongside of those people and see them transform and really take a hold of their life.
Yeah, and I feel like that gives you an extra sense of motivation for why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah. I've been reading a lot of business books and stuff like that. In the last couple of weeks, I've really tried to figure out my why, and, to be able to write it down specifically. And part of that comes from digging into Simon Sinek's books, and one of them was Start With Why. And he gives a great example of Apple and how they're so good at their why that they're able to cross different platforms of business and be successful anywhere they go. And as I'm asking myself that week after week and struggling with it and asking people, what do you think my why is? What do you think the gym's why is? God literally just reminded me twice in a week that my why is I'm in the people business. And, it's amazing when people come into your office and are like, hey, I got this going on. I never told anyone this, but, they finish those sentences with just amazing things that it just leaves me in my office crying with them and praying with them and hugging them. And it's just amazing to see what God has done through such a small business.
It's such a blessing to have that type of, not every gym does that. I don't know any gym that does that. And so, having that is like an extra, it's like an extra free service, like a complimentary thing. It's like, coffee at the door, except it's a lot more valuable.
We have, there's 3 extra chairs in our office, and someone always joked, I'm not sitting in those chairs. That's pathetic. And, sometimes it's true, but sometimes, one of the biggest lessons I've learned, I've tried to implement walking daily, which I fail at continually, is simply treating people with empathy and being generous, and just meeting people where they are with love. And that's one of the biggest challenges, not only in life but in business, because things are going to go wrong, but it's what are you going to correct? How are you going to adapt? What good are you going to see from it?
Right, right. So, and kind of going back again, with the people you say that you like to talk to other business like-minded people. So, do you have like a group that you kind of like a specific group you surround yourself with? Are you part of any type of group that meets on a regular basis to kind of just make sure you're on track or up to date on the latest business stuff? Is there anything like that you're a part of?
I am not, but I wish I would be. Yeah, I mean, so I was reading the other day, listening to some podcasts, and the guy was talking about you don't need to put yourself at somebody else's, beck and call for a week or a month to be their servant to learn. There's so many books out there. Just follow the person on social media, read all their books, see what that's about. And the last 8 months or so, I'd really have dove into reading, and I really hated reading before, to be honest. I wasn't good at it. I didn't feel like I read anything that was worthwhile, and I've just gotten so much out of it recently. And Tom Bilyeu, he specifically talks about when reading's developed correctly, it's your superpower. So I'm trying to be a learner.
Yeah, knowledge is power, and wisdom comes from God. So having that knowledge and transforming that into wisdom and being wise is just it's incredible. It can cause you to do, and it allows you to do pretty much anything.
Yeah.
And so, being able to empower yourself by learning and growing. And I'm a huge fan of continuing to learn all the time. And so, I was going to wait to the end to ask, but I guess I'll just go ahead and ask you now. What are some good podcasts that you enjoy, and some of the business books you've read lately that's made kind of the biggest impact?
Yeah. So podcasts, I would say one I just recently started listening to, and I'm so upset I did not start listening to it before, was Westside Barbell. Listening to their training techniques, their conjugate methods of training, things like that. It's just amazing. So I've really dove headfirst into that one recently. As far as other podcasts, on YouTube, one of the biggest guys who's been an influence in me is Tom Bilyeu. He was one of the co-founders of Quest Nutrition. He has 3 different podcasts going on.
Can you spell that last name?
Tom Bilyeu. That's a good. Bilyeu, maybe? It's got to be close.
Okay.
Bilyeu. Wow, I was right. Look at that. But yeah, he has a great podcast going on. And one of the things that I like the most about him is that I don't agree with everything he says. I think it is dangerous to surround yourself by people who think just like you, because that's not going to challenge you. And that's one of the biggest things that I get out of him. Ryan Holiday, his book Perennial Seller, that one really spoke to me of building a email database, a following before you actually need them. So later on in your business, whenever you need something, or you're gonna make a big move that you're gonna need their support with, and that you want to flood them with good, useful information that will help better them. That book really helped me with that.
Is that the same guy that did Growth Hacker?
I don't know.
I'll have to look it up. I'm pretty sure. I'll have to go back and look. I'm pretty sure he did another book called Growth Hacker, and which is pretty good. So
okay,
I know I've heard that name before in the business realm.
Yeah.
What was the name of that book again?
Perennial Seller. Patrick Lencioni. Okay. He's another great one. The 5 Temptations of a CEO and Obsessions of Extraordinary Executive. I saw him speak also, and he's just a good Christian guy. He tells stories with business, and it is just amazing. Like, he's awesome. I really enjoy his stuff. I mentioned before Simon Sinek, another book of his, Leaders Eat Last, about David Green, one of the founders of Hobby Lobby. Giving It All Away was the title of his book. about philanthropy, but also just being humble in what you're doing and letting God work through you in that. I could go on, but it's just, I've really enjoyed learning and getting all these people and stuff like that. It's just amazing.
So do you like to find some of the bigger Christian business leaders, or do you just kind of pay attention to any business leader with great information?
I'll pretty much read everything.
Okay. Some people are, I mean, I hate to say it, but some people are very religious about who they listen to business wise.
Yeah.
And so they'll only look for Christian business leaders. But I feel like there's other things to learn from other people who are not, Christians,
Yeah.
not that they're, like Satanist or anything, but
And I think that goes back to being challenged with what you believe. And just because someone's not a Christian doesn't mean they don't have good business ideas. So I think you can always learn from everybody.
Awesome, man. Awesome. That's a good list. I'm gonna try to create. I'm gonna try to take those books and those podcasts, put them on the website under our show notes page. That way, people can access those, and in the podcast as well. So any more that you have that you want to send me a list, Kevin, that'd be great, and I'll add them on there as well. So, and I'm gonna have to read some of these myself because I haven't read some of these, but I definitely heard Simon Sinek's name a lot.
Yeah.
So definitely everybody needs to read that. Leaders Eat Last. So yeah, man. So just to kind of round it up, is there any type of just some good advice you want to give somebody that just to kind of leave an imprint in somebody's mind and heart if they're trying to get started in business that you feel like anybody needs to know when getting started?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest questions and what I've tried diving into is what's your passion? It's such a big question, and a lot of people struggle with it, of their meaning of life and whatnot. And I think it comes down to, once again, just action. And if you're willing to go out there and try new things, that's the only way you're going to find your passion. And, with that, when you find it, it's going to give you more energy than it takes. If it doesn't, then it is not your passion. And if it is, then you're going to find your purpose with it.
Right. Yeah. And, one thing I had just heard lately, and it kind of fits that, is, God doesn't create anybody and then figure out a purpose for them. Right. God knows that there's something wrong here on earth in your area or somewhere, and he creates you for that purpose.
Yep.
And so I think one of the most important things for us to do is find that purpose. And that purpose, usually almost always has passion behind it. And then figure out how to, grab it by the horns and go and do something with it.
Yep.
And thankfully, man, you're there making a difference in your community, man. And, I appreciate that myself, even though I'm not there, locally. But just seeing people, outside of the pastoral, ministry realm, making a difference and changing people's lives, spiritually and physically. I feel like, physicality is one thing that I don't see, mainstream, I hate to use it, but like mainstream Christianity or mainstream Christians that I see in the world don't really focus on the physical body that much, taking care of it. But God gave us one body, so I appreciate you having a place where they can go and take care of that, and also find some spiritual food if they need it as well. And so that's incredible, man. Kevin, I do appreciate your time, man. And anybody who might be in your local area who'd want to check out your gym, about where is it at? And because there might be somebody in your area who wants to check it out. Where is it at? Where can they find it at?
Yeah, it's on 5131 East Callow Road. It's right between Springfield and Poland. You can find us on our Instagram and on our website as well.
Cool. And what's that under?
Iron Maid Gym.
Iron Maid Gym. Well, Kevin, man, like I said, I appreciate your time. I'm looking forward to seeing what goes on with your gym. Hopefully, it grows if that's what you want to do, what God wants you to do. And I'm sure you'll be in prayer about that as well.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. Thank you for all you do as well.
All right. Thank you for being here for the interview.
Yes, sir.
All righty. That was the interview with Mr. Kevin Byers from Iron Maid Gym. I learned a lot myself, and I was asking from a genuine interest because I do go to the gym myself, and a lot of times I'm just there as a a customer, and I'm thinking, I wonder how they they do this, they do that. I wonder how they got started, all that stuff. I'm very curious in that regard, and so I was able to get those questions answered by somebody who owns their own gym, which for me was a really cool thing. And so anyway, if it helped you out at all, please let me know. Love to get some feedback on that. And I also want to say we are the current podcast channel, which if you're listening to this, then you're probably listening from the Trackstarz website or from the new iTunes or the new iTunes channel, I'd say. You have to subscribe on iTunes for the new Business with Bordeaux show. It has the Trackstarz T in the corner of it because we are part of the Trackstarz podcasting network officially now in that regards. So make sure you subscribe to that. I did notice though, and I didn't notice before, and I apologize for not saying it. I actually did have a couple of people who went and rated and reviewed the show. And I think right after that happened, I started having people reach out to me about the show, about coming on to be interviewed and things like that. So I thank you to anybody who was let the review. And if you want to go under the new channel and you can just do the same review or update it, do whatever, I would greatly appreciate that. And I thank y'all for doing that because it does help expose others to the show. And so again, though, we are doing the Conversations with Stars giveaway. So make sure you take your favorite episode of the show, share it on your social media, and hashtag Business with Bordeaux. Do that by May 1st. You may want to do it today just in case you forget, just while you're on your phone. Just go ahead and do it, and you will enter in to win a chance for this signed copy of the book from Kelly Cole. Again, that's Conversations with the Sharks. Sorry. Conversations with the Sharks, in which he actually interviews Barbara Cochran and Damon Green or John. Lord, can't get that right. Damon John from Shark Tank, and you get a lot of great information there. And so I also want to thank Mr. Aaron Simpkins at TrueStrengthApparel.com for being a patron for the show, and make sure you hit him up and get a nice shirt. Get something. You got some tank tops too. You can work out in, or you can just walk around in the summertime. And so I appreciate y'all doing that, supporting those who support this show. And please keep in prayer. And if you're able to give financially, go over to the GoFundMe that Trackstarz has on their webpage, their Twitter and everything. And it's on mine as well. But Crispy, he is our social media director at Trackstarz. Please keep him in your prayers. He's already had like 3 or 4 surgeries in a time frame of 7 days. And so, again, he had the acetic acid or the corrosive acid poured on his body, 60% from a home invasion attack. So please keep him in your prayers. And we really appreciate that. He's part of the kingdom. He's part of the body of Christ. So he is your brother as much as he is mine. And so please do that, and we would appreciate it. And until next time, I hope you grow in your walk. I hope you grow in your business, and I hope you go further in your journey. Thanks, and God bless.